Hi everyone and welcome to Ride with Roy. Now don't worry, if you're not interested in riding bicycles, you've not come to the wrong place today. And that's because today I'm devoting this episode to heated clothing. Now if you've watched any of my videos before, you'll know that I've mentioned that I do suffer from the cold. That's got worse as I've got older. I guess it's circulation and so on. So if you're someone that works outside, maybe spends a lot of time outside for leisure. I know when I was flying microlights, I had problems with the cold at altitude particularly, and with wind chill. So golfers, anglers, walkers, basically anyone that enjoys the outdoors in the winter. I also know that if I'm working in my unheated garage for any length of time, that cold permeates up through my feet. And cold can be quite debilitating. As far as I'm concerned, I know that my reactions are certainly reduced, and that can be quite dangerous, especially when you're riding a bike. I tried many types of gloves, and in fact the best that I tried was in fact probably one of the cheapest, and that's the crab glove by Planet X. And as you can see, you've got these two separate finger pockets, so you do get a more transferred warmth between your fingers. This glove was recommended by one of our regular viewers, Heidi, and Heidi suffers from Raynaud's syndrome, which is extremely painful. And I tried these gloves, and I have to say they were everything she said they were. They can make your hands a bit sweaty, but at least you keep warm. However, while these worked well for me for a couple of winters, now I am feeling the cold, so I needed something more, and I guess that was going to have to be a heated product. I contacted several manufacturers and asked them if they would like to offer their products for review. I made it clear that I wasn't looking to keep the products, I just wanted to try them and evaluate them. Of the ones that replied, one actually said, yeah, well, we'll give you a discount, but yeah, we're not sending anything to be reviewed. But one company was very accommodating, and they said, yes, we'd be delighted for you to try our products. They're obviously proud of their products and really wanted to make more people aware of them. And that company is Vulcan Sportswear. Now, it's quite convenient that Vulcan Sportswear are situated just an hour's drive from where I live. They're over in Leicester. So I took a drive over to Leicester and I met with the founder, John Durrance. John is quite a unique character, and if you watch the series on BBC, SAS Ultimate Hell Week, you would have seen John. John actually got through to the final group, but he lost out, and many think he should have won. And the thing that held him back was his profound deafness. And it meant that one of his major senses wasn't available to him, and that's very important in that sort of extreme competition. And if growing up profoundly deaf wasn't challenge enough, John has embraced virtually any challenge going as far as the outdoors concerned. He's been on major expeditions, cycling, he's a triathlete, basically anything extreme, he's there. But that meant that John has suffered with the cold. And he more than anybody knows that extreme cold not only can be uncomfortable, it can be extremely dangerous. John had tried various types of heated clothing and wasn't happy. One of the reasons was that much of the clothing available uses copper wire as a conductor for the heat. Now, the problem with copper wire is, A, with rough handling it can be damaged, but B, you can't wash it because washing corrodes the copper. So if any of you have worn any gloves or socks for a long time, you'll know that they need washing. Well, mine certainly do. Now, as you know, necessity is the mother of invention, and this is where John's engineering degree came in. 15 years ago, John was designing cars, in fact electric cars, and one of the models has only just been released. So he knows a thing or two about engineering and materials and so on. And this is where his knowledge of carbon fibre came in. John wondered if carbon fibre could be used to transmit infrared rays to provide the heat on a garment. So he worked away and he developed his first products, and that's where Vulcan Sportswear came into being. Now, I'm not going to go into lots of technical detail here, partly because the technology here is probably beyond my understanding. But needless to say, John tested this theory, started to make the products, and basically they took off. John's prerequisites for the product would be that it would be light, durable, but also allow enough flexibility in the hands, for example in gloves. And it's this quality that makes the gloves in particular a popular favourite of film cameramen, because they're able to keep warm in very cold conditions, but they can still operate the various buttons and controls on the camera. One such cameraman used the product successfully to film a series in Norway, and I've seen the glowing testimonial from him. A mountaineer climbed K2 wearing this kit. And there's currently a feature film being made in Iceland's winter, and that crew are using this kit. There are many Olympians using his products, including places like Canada, USA, UK. Also, there is a major UK sports team using his products, and again I can't tell you who they are. But what I can tell you is they were so impressed with John's products that they gave him a gift of a top-of-the-range Pinarello track bike. And in fact, it's so top of the range, John has never ridden it. So that's the sort of pedigree we're dealing with here. So I figured that if the product could handle those sort of conditions, then, you know, for me, riding my bike in the winter, it should be a doddle. After John spent some time asking me about my specific needs, I explained to him it was mainly my hands that were of concern. He did pick up on the fact that I told him I get cold feet. So he said, well, you ought to try my heated socks and my heated insoles. So I jumped at the chance, and John fitted me up with the gloves, the socks and the insoles. They all come sized based on your normal hand sizes for gloves and shoe size for the footwear and so on. I won't produce a review and give a recommendation unless I've given the product a good try. So I took these products out for several days on some fairly long rides, and temperatures range from 5 degrees C right down to 2 degrees C. But on all of these days there was a wind chill factor that dropped the temperature by a couple of degrees, plus the movement riding through the air on my bike dropped it more. So I had days that were 1 degree down to -1 degree C. Now what I've done as far as these reviews are concerned, all the reviews are here, but I've split them into chapters, so you can actually look up the specific product if you only are interested, for example, in the socks, or you can look at all of them, obviously. At the end I will put a conclusion in, so it's worth looking at that as well. So let's get going by looking at the gloves. The first thing to say about the gloves is that there's a whole range of them. The ones I'm trying here are considered to be the skiing stroke cycling glove, but frankly it's a universal glove as far as I'm concerned. The first thing I noticed about the glove is that it's very, very flexible. I can move my fingers around, especially on my bike. I can control the gears easily enough. What I also particularly like is that it comes up nicely over the cuff, so keeps the chills out. Now with the battery in, you can probably just see the shape of the battery here, and I'll show you that in a moment, but I just didn't notice it. Once I was riding, there was no issue. There's no weight there at all. What I did notice from the point of view of this being called a cycling glove is that there's no padding for the palm. And this is why I say it's more of a universal glove. What I would do if I was worried about the padding is buy a larger size glove and then just wear a padded cycling mitt underneath. But frankly, for the hours that I've ridden, I haven't found this to be a problem anyway, so I certainly wouldn't be doing that. Now I don't know how clearly you can see this, but each glove has the index finger with a touch sensitive end to it, so you can control your mobile devices and so on. I did try this on my smartphone. I have to say I'm not that good at smartphones, but yeah, I could scroll around the screen and so on. Certainly if you were wanting to text, I would think you'd have a problem because of the thickness, but just to say scroll through on a Garmin head unit or whatever, I'm sure this would be ideal for that. The battery lives in this little compartment here. It just has a Velcro fastening. Battery comes out. It's not the smallest of batteries, but then you need the power for a long duration, but it's pretty light, and as I said, I didn't even feel it in there. You've got a nice solid connector here. You hold this white button down and that initiates the battery, and you'll see that the glove control lit up at the same time. Once the battery is initiated, it literally is a case of pop it back inside its protective pocket, close up the Velcro, pop the glove on, you tighten this strap up, and there's your glove ready to go. Now to operate it, it's all just by push button, and you can see there we're on the high level, we drop down to the medium level, and then drop down to the lowest level. Now what you'll find is that after you've worn the glove for a time and it warms up, it will automatically drop down to the mid-level. So it's a way of saving some battery power. This glove comes with this nice silicone gripper surface, so certainly if you're gripping ski poles or your bike handlebars and so on, then this gives you that grip. A nice little touch is that the battery charger comes complete with the transformer, so it's not just a USB that you've got to find a slot to stick it into, and obviously it'll come with the correct plug for your country. But in terms of charging, it doesn't charge through the same connector that operates the glove. You have a USB-C port here, and what I like is that you've got two connectors, so you can charge both batteries from the same transformer at the same time. The instruction manual suggests that if you rode with these on full power, you'd get around 2 to 2.5 hours use. I found that I actually got about 3 hours, but that was with high power and then going to mid power. They say if you operate on the mid power, you're going to get something like 3 to 3.5 hours, and on low power you're going to get 5-6 hours. However, this sort of thing is very subjective. It's going to depend on how much heat you need as a person. It's going to depend on the actual temperature you're riding in, so it's difficult to say, but I would say the figures given in the manual are realistic. I rode with these for 4 hours on the day when it was a wind chill factor of 0 and probably -1 given the speed I was travelling through the air. After 3 hours the battery had expired, but I was still pretty warm. The gloves are clearly nicely made and they're well insulated anyway, so the heat is a nice bonus. And I would say for somebody that doesn't suffer terribly, then the lowest setting is going to give you a really good day with these. Now this is the ski stroke cycle glove, but there are others in the range which I'm showing here, so take a look at the website and you'll see what's available. But I have to say I'm very happy with these. I think they're a great glove. I really can't find any fault with them. But of course one of the most important features here is that you can wash this glove. And you know how it can be if you've been riding your bike, for example, and you have a chain come off and your hands get dirty. So this is where this product really comes into its own. Now you can machine wash them, but they must be put into a laundry bag. And of course the first thing you've got to do is make sure that you remove the battery. One nice little touch is that once you remove the battery, Vulcan have supplied a little cap that goes over this, so it protects the plug while your gloves are in the wash. Frankly, I don't think that's really necessary, because once the glove is dry enough to wear, so the socket's going to be dry as well. What you mustn't do with these is wring them out. Obviously that could damage the working parts of the glove. The heated part of this glove is the back of the hand, so all down to the fingertips. And this is important because this is where, if you're riding a bike or you're skiing or whatever, this is the part that's being projected into the airflow. I've tried to come up with a way of describing the heating to you. And the best I can do is say it's not like an electric blanket, you know, where you're going to feel a strong heat in your hands, especially when you're outside. I mean, if you're inside, you will do, but outside, what it will do is keep the chill away. So you're not going to feel that your hands are hot, but what you're going to feel is that they're not cold. And that's the important part. So it's quite a subtle heat. And it's one of those things that you don't notice until you haven't got it. Now, what I did on one of the occasions is I rode with a crab glove on one hand and this glove on the other, and I quickly found that, you know, I was getting very cold with the crab glove, but it just felt normal. What I also like is that they are clearly breathable. Your hands don't get sweaty in them. Certainly when I was coming down a hill, I was doing almost 30 miles an hour. I could feel a chill coming through the glove with the airflow, but I wasn't cold. But that shows me that the gloves are breathing. So all in all, I think this is a must-have as far as I'm concerned. And I would say if you do suffer from the cold, this is a great product to have. Now, if you're going to be out for a long period of time, say you're going on an all-day walk and you may suffer cold throughout the day, then it's easy just to have a spare battery. Take that with you. So, they're the heated gloves. So now let's take a look at the heated socks. So the first thing you're going to notice is that this is a long sock. It's made of a very nice heavy-duty material. It's nice and stretchy. And you would order these based on shoe size, and I'm a 9.5 and these come to just below my knee. And it's good that it actually gives you that extra layer of warmth on the lower leg. The sock also gives a good amount of compression, which is a good thing certainly for cycling. The battery actually fits into this little pocket here at the top of the sock, and it's simply a case of plug in and then pop the battery down into the pocket. There's no seal here, there's no need, because once they're worn, the battery's not going to go anywhere. Now, it will give you a slight little bulge, so if you're wearing bib tights, for example, you're going to get a slight extra bulge on the side, but not any issue as far as I'm concerned. What will happen as soon as you put this in, the sock will start to heat up. But once the battery's connected, you then use this very smart little remote control fob to control the sock. And this has 3 heat settings, so high, medium and low, and also an off button. So once you're warm enough, you can adjust the heat or you can turn off. I've been keeping this hooked onto my front bag on the bike, or you could pop it in a pocket or whatever. If you're using another garment that uses the remote control, you can pair the individual remote with the individual product. So, you know, you're not going to switch on your socks and switch insoles on at the same time. So that's quite useful. One immediate concern I had was that with the weight of the battery, the socks would be dropping down, but certainly that's not been the case. There's enough compression here to keep those socks in place. And when you consider pedaling a bike for 4 hours, there was no movement at all. The heating for the sock is actually all in the toe area, and that's because that's where the nerve endings are. So feeling the sock now, that portion to that side of my fingers is being heated. I wouldn't want anywhere else heating because I think that would be quite uncomfortable, plus it would use unnecessary power. So this area will keep the toes nice and warm, and that in turn will keep the rest of your foot warm. Now, if you're going to wear these socks for cycling, you'll know that cycling specific shoes are relatively lightweight and relatively thin, so they lose heat quite quickly. So it's recommended that when you're cycling, you use a shoe cover, something similar to that, and that's going to keep the heat. And you probably use these in the winter anyway. If you're riding with flat shoes, say trainers and so on, they're going to have a certain amount of padding anyway, so they're going to keep the heat in. But I did try the socks with the shoes, without the shoe covers, and they worked absolutely fine. All I would say is that with the shoe covers, you've got that much more insulation, so you're going to get a bit more time out of the battery. Again, we've got this nice little cap to protect the plug while you're washing. But as I said before, I don't think it's really necessary. I would probably take that off, to be honest, but it's there, so it's up to you. These are totally washable. You pop them in a laundry bag if they're going in the washing machine, or you could wash them by hand. And then obviously it's a case of lay them out to dry. And of course, I know it's obvious, but make sure the person washing them, if it's not you, understands that there is a battery that needs taking out, because you don't want to put a lithium battery through the wash. And the other thing is to make sure these aren't wrung out, because otherwise you're going to damage the internal workings of the sock. So the socks get a thumbs up. I would say if I was doing a 100-mile ride, for example, in the winter, which I have done, I would want to take a spare battery with me, because I think the start of the ride is where I would need the heat until I get warmed up. And then usually as I get towards the end and start to tire, that's again where I start to suffer from the cold. So it's no big deal to take an extra couple of batteries if you so wish. I see these being very, very useful, not just for cycling, but people playing golf, for example, gardeners, anybody that's outdoors. I think the applications for these are endless, and I think they'd make a great gift for somebody. So let's now turn our attention to the heated insoles. Now, clearly with the heated insoles, there's nowhere to put the battery. So the battery is actually built in, and as you can see, it's still a very, very slim insole. What I also like is that even though this has the battery and the whole thing is designed mainly for heating, you've actually got a nice bit of comfort here. There's a springiness to the insole. So the insole is actually doing the job that you would want an insole to do. You can probably make out on here the ergonomic shape. It's actually shaped for the foot, so it's going to keep the foot healthy and comfortable. And also, it has a breathable surface, so it's going to stop the foot getting sweaty and allow it to breathe. Another nice little touch is this pad here, which is designed partly to grip onto the shoe, but it also provides a certain amount of comfort for the heel. These are ordered by shoe size, but quite usefully, you can still trim in this area to allow it to fit the shoe. I'm a 9.5 and these fit my shoes perfectly. I didn't need to cut anything off at all. Charging of the insole is via a micro USB, and that just fits in here. You've also got a micro switch behind here, and that's necessary to turn the insole on before you put it in your shoe. And that can be done through this silicone cover that protects the workings. And literally you will just press the micro switch on. It will light up to show you that it's connected, and then once you've put it in the shoe, we're back to our remote control fob where you've got again the 3 heat settings and the off control. What you need to do is make sure that you do turn the insole on before you try to use this. This won't switch the insole on. Another one of my concerns was that with a cycling specific shoe, where they're quite snug, I felt that this might take up too much space. But once I took the existing insole out, I realised it wasn't much difference in thickness to this. This is slightly thicker because obviously you have the battery. So if you've got really, really tight shoes to start with, then be careful if you choose the insole. But if you're using this in other applications, so for example, Wellington boots, if you're gardening or farming or whatever, say you're doing site work and your feet get cold when you're wearing work boots, these are going to work fine. I did experiment wearing the heated socks with the heated insoles just to see how it would work out. But there wasn't enough room for both in the cycling shoe. However, I did try it with some walking boots and I had plenty of room and they were comfortable. I didn't need to have both on at once, there was no point. But if you did have both, You could, I guess, start off your walk with the insoles and then carry on with the socks if you so wish, give you a full day. The way that I've tested all of these products is to make sure that I am comfortable with the heat they're giving out, I'm not cold, and I've run them until the battery expires. I had a bit of a problem with this one, and that is that I'd been riding for 4 hours and I thought, well, the battery must have expired by now, but my feet were still warm. So I did check, and sure enough, the battery was flat, but I was still warm. And I believe that's because we've got such a good insulating layer with these insoles, plus the fact that I was warm through exercise. My feet were nice and toasty, even at the end of that 4-hour ride. So again, another winner. Now, one thing you'll notice when you look at the pricing on these, they're not cheap. The whole point is they are not cheap. They're well designed, a lot of thought's gone into them. When you just look at something on the internet, you know, glove's a glove, but now hopefully with this knowledge, you'll start to look at how the glove's powered. Is it copper wires and so on? Can it be washed? These are the sort of questions you need to ask. So are they good value? Well, I would argue that if you are debilitated by the cold, for example, then I think it's worth paying the money for them. But to help with the price a little, John has generously agreed to give a 10% discount. And all you need to do on checkout is use the code ROY10. I'll put a link in the description, but use that code on any of John's products. Now, like all of these offers, they can be withdrawn at any time. So if you are looking at ordering, obviously do it as soon as you can. One of the areas I looked at carefully was customer care. I'll always ask a supplier a series of questions about customer care, ask for some examples and so on. If I'm buying something personally, I'll actually put a call into a customer care line just to see how long it takes them to answer and what sort of response I get. The good thing about a company that's run by an entrepreneur, we have this as a great example with Tire Glider, the same with Redshift Sports. These people are invested in their business and they are very protective of their reputation. And John Durrance is no exception. He will answer every customer service query direct. Frankly, being totally honest with you, after speaking with him, I think he's probably a bit too kind. And there have been situations where the customers clearly damaged the product through misuse, and particularly this happens with batteries, and John has actually helped them out because he wants to do right by his customer. And this is where we need to look at things that can go wrong. Now, clearly, if you handle them badly through washing inappropriately and so on and wringing out, then you are going to damage the product. But the other area that you really need to take note of is batteries. Now, these products all use lithium-ion batteries, and there is a specific problem with this type of garment, and that is that you'll wear it throughout the winter. Come the warmer weather, you may well just pop them in a drawer and forget about them for 6 months. Now, this product has a safety margin in it, in that when the battery is fully discharged, there is still a safety margin in the battery, so it doesn't over discharge. Now, the problem is that lithium-ion batteries do discharge slowly over time. So if you left these products in the drawer and they went in the drawer flat, then the chances are that by the time you get them out in the autumn, the battery will no longer be any good because it's over discharged. So it's important that you make a note in the diary and every couple of months give these a top-up charge. That's the most important thing with the batteries. Now, if you're using a modern e-bike, that's going to have a lithium-ion battery and that needs to be taken care of. And I've actually made a specific video on taking care of those batteries, and I'll put a link up there for you so you can see exactly how to do it. So what are my conclusions? Well, certainly the gloves are a must-have as far as I'm concerned. They're excellent, and I think depending on what sort of activity you're doing, you might even need a waterproof glove, for example, and you could choose that from the Vulcan range. So the glove is a must-have. As far as the socks and the insoles go, if I purely want something to keep my feet warm while I'm cycling, I would go for the socks because they do a great job. They give me the compression and so on. They give me that extra layer up to my knees and they're ideal. If on the other hand, I was in a situation where, say, I was working in a workshop with a cold floor, for example, doing lots of cold walks, volunteering outdoors and so on, then I would consider the insole. And that's purely because it's going to fit in a range of footwear. I'm going to get this nice heat radiating up through my foot. But either way, either product is going to work. And of course, if you really wanted to be extravagant, you could wear both in a suitably roomy boot. So I hope that was useful, and I hope if you do suffer from the cold, this is going to give you one way of getting some relief. I know people will comment and make recommendations for all sorts of unpowered gloves and so on. That's fine, please do that. I won't take them up because I've tried almost everything and I've not found anything that really works for me. And as I say, I think that's probably a circulation thing as I get older. If you have found the video useful, I'd really appreciate it if you give it a like, a thumbs up. If you didn't like it, then by all means give it a thumbs down. It's still good for me. And also, if you're interested in cycling and getting into cycling, please consider subscribing. My videos are all about the average cyclist. I'm not talking about, you know, speedy pelotons and all the rest of it and racing. What I'm interested in is encouraging normal people to use normal bikes for everyday use and enjoying the health-giving benefits, the fresh air and the enjoyment of getting out in company that riding a bicycle gives. So if you'd like to join me again in the future, please subscribe, hit the bell button, and then you'll be informed of upcoming videos. If I don't see you again, thanks for watching, and if you are going to subscribe, I look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks a lot.